Welcome to the first of 3 videos in the Evergreen Indiana Foundation series. This video will introduce you to the different aspects of the Evergreen Indiana Library Consortium, and help you build a solid base of information about how the consortium works, as well as a little bit about the software. Before we get into what Evergreen Indiana is, there are a few terms that you'll hear used over and over. Let's make sure that we have some shared vocabulary moving forward. The first term to consider is consortium. You will hear this word used a lot when talking about Evergreen Indiana. In our context today, a consortium means an association of independent libraries who have chosen to participate in and pool their resources for the shared use of the Evergreen ILS and related activities. Next, let's talk about the term client. In popular culture, a client often refers to a person receiving services. In software, a client is a piece of software that accesses a service made available by a server. In Evergreen Indiana, the term client refers to the browser-based staff interface for the Evergreen ILS. Now, consider the word patron. It means someone who gives money and/or other support to such things as artists, musicians, and organizations. Because of the monetary implications, some libraries have chosen to find alternative language for those people who use library services. Because of the highly collaborative nature of the Evergreen Indiana Library Consortium, it is important to keep in mind that different member libraries may use different terms or labels such as customer or user for the people using the library. In terms of the Evergreen software, there are also places that use different labels for those individuals who have a library account. Finally, we have a term that is specific to Evergreen Indiana and the Evergreen software: circulation modifier. We will talk more extensively about circulation modifiers or circmods in this module, but for now, just know that a circmod is an internal materials type designator or designation that defines circulation terms, fines, and other limits. So, what is Evergreen Indiana? Evergreen Indiana is a membership consortium with almost 130 Indiana library systems in over 180 locations around the state of Indiana. These library systems are referred to as member libraries, with each paying an annual fee based on their yearly expenditures. Each member library is considered an Evergreen Council member with a vote in each Evergreen Indiana election. Evergreen Indiana member libraries share a lot of things, including circulation and cataloging policies, along with the catalog and library management software named Evergreen ILS, or Integrated Library System. The consortium offers its members many benefits such as robust resource sharing utilizing InfoExpress, special discounts, and group purchasing power. Evergreen Indiana also provides extensive, regular, and free training and continues to develop new platforms to make learning work on your schedule. Most recently, Evergreen Indiana became both a member of, and coordinator for, the Evergreen Community Development Initiative, or ECDI. The ECDI is an international group of library organizations who have joined together to help determine and fund improvements to the Evergreen software. Any group is only as good as it is managed. Evergreen Indiana is a group that is managed by its members with a focus on participation by library staff at all levels. 4 committees lead Evergreen Indiana. The Executive Committee, or EC, is made up of 9 elected voting members representing Class A, B, and C-sized libraries. Non-voting members of the Executive Committee include the state librarian or their representative, the director of Evergreen Indiana as employed by the Indiana State Library, and 1 representative from both the Association of Indiana Media Educators and the Special Library Association. Voting members of the Executive Committee are elected by a majority vote of the council members at the annual meeting, traditionally held during the Evergreen Indiana Annual Conference. The Executive Committee is responsible for formulating policies, acting upon recommendations, and making recommendations to the Indiana State Library pertaining to Evergreen Indiana. The EC also conducts research involving library entity patrons and/or personnel to determine best practices at any given time. 3 subcommittees support both the consortium and the Executive Committee. These are the patron services, cataloging, and e-content committees. You can read more extensively about each of these committees by visiting the Evergreen Indiana website. There, you can view the Evergreen Indiana bylaws as well as the rules of governance for each subcommittee. If you are interested in participating with any of these committees, please talk with your supervisor and/or reach out to a committee member or the Evergreen Indiana coordinator. To serve the people of Indiana in the best manner possible, Evergreen Indiana holds to some core tenets that are laid out in a couple documents. The Patron Record Confidentiality Policy establishes guidelines for the protection of personally identifying information that is contained in library records and accessible within the library or through its computer systems. You can access this policy by clicking on the About link at the top of the screen on the Evergreen Indiana website. From that menu, select Policies and Procedures. We're going to take a few minutes to look closely at this policy. The concept of confidentiality is a closely held value in the Evergreen Indiana Library Consortium and the library profession. It's important that you have a clear understanding of what that means in terms of how you use the Evergreen software and the information it manages. The first two statements in the policy define terms that are used throughout the rest of the document. The third statement in the Patron Record Confidentiality Policy states who can access patron records, and why they can access them. These include authorized staff members, independent contractors, and other authorized agents of member libraries, individuals who need access to do their jobs as it relates to the use of the Evergreen Library System in administering library business. The next statement, number 4, then lays out who can receive information about a patron from their patron record. This states that library staff will not disclose patron information of any type to anyone except for the owner of the account, and anyone who has signed to accept financial responsibility for the account holder. In the next few statements, you will find information about Evergreen policy regarding third-party requests for patron information. Please note that any request for information that does not come from the account holder or their representative based on number 4 is considered a third-party request. Please take the time to familiarize yourself with the entire Patron Record Confidentiality Policy and direct any questions you might have to the Evergreen Indiana coordinator. More information about privacy and confidentiality as library core values can also be found on the ALA website in the Privacy Toolkit. In addition to the Patron Record Confidentiality Policy, the Evergreen Indiana Library Consortium also requires that everyone with access to the staff client have a signed copy of the Evergreen Indiana Code of Ethics in their personnel file. You can access both versions of this form by clicking on Member Resources at the top of the Evergreen Indiana website and selecting Forms from the menu. Under the Administration heading, you will see links to both the Staff Code of Ethics form and the Director Code of Ethics form. The Code of Ethics, among other things, affirms many of the principles outlined in the Patron Record Confidentiality Policy. This form is an important part of training new staff, and reminding existing personnel how the independent libraries of the Evergreen Indiana Library Consortium are able to interact with one another and make consortial resource sharing possible. Documentation makes using Evergreen software and participating in the Evergreen Indiana Consortium possible. A wide range of policies, procedures, and tools have been developed by Evergreen Indiana member libraries to guide the operations related to cataloging, circulation, patron records, confidentiality, hardware and software, and staff use. These policies and procedures are located on the Evergreen Indiana website along with other important documents like the Circulation Matrix and the Patron Matrix. The Circulation Matrix lists the available circulation modifiers that can be utilized to describe library materials including their format, any limits to how many can be checked out, how long items can be borrowed, and more. The Circulation Matrix is an essential tool for all staff members who catalog or edit item records. It is also an important reference for any staff members who need to communicate with patrons about what items can be placed on hold or transit to other Evergreen Indiana libraries and a variety of other material-related topics. The patron matrix lists and describes the various types of accounts that can be created for patrons. Please note that no staff account types are listed in the patron matrix, and no staff person should use a patron profile for their day-to-day work in Evergreen, Indiana. Staff cards are for personal use by individuals employed at Evergreen, Indiana libraries and are a privilege that may be extended by their employer. We will discuss the distinction between staff accounts and staff cards in the Staff Interfaces video. Training is an essential component for successful participation in this consortium. A variety of mechanisms and tools are available to you to make this process more convenient and enriching. The right environment is an essential aspect for training. In a school, this might be referred to as a classroom. In a park, it might be referred to as a playground. In software, it is often referred to as a sandbox. A sandbox, in this context, refers to an instance of the software where individuals can experiment and practice skills without disturbing the day-to-day operations, record integrity, or software behavior. For the purposes of experimenting and practicing, Evergreen, Indiana has two such environments. The training server can be utilized by anyone to practice using the various features of Evergreen, Indiana's customized version of the Evergreen ILS. This server has a sample set of user records or accounts and bibliographic records. The user accounts for the training server are included in the linked document on this slide. The bibliographic records are from a dataset referred to as Concerto. None of these records, user or bibliographic, are related to records in the actual Evergreen, Indiana production ILS. Any changes to records on the training server have no impact on what is going on in Evergreen, Indiana libraries beyond the experience gained by those utilizing it. An important aspect of the training server is that it resets every night, restoring itself to its original state. The other sandbox environment that is sometimes utilized is the migration server. When new libraries join Evergreen, Indiana, this server is used for data checking. The migration server is available at other times for use as a training tool. This server is only available to individuals who have a signed code of ethics form in their personnel files because it contains a snapshot of Evergreen, Indiana user records in the entire bibliographic database. Accessing this server is done using your individual staff account credentials. This server does not reset on a daily basis, so it has the potential to get pretty messy. In addition to the sandboxes, training manuals are available for nearly every aspect of Evergreen, Indiana's ILS, including circulation, cataloging, local administration and reporting. These training manuals are updated regularly as the ILS incorporates new features and policies and procedures evolve to accommodate the needs of the consortium and its patrons. While these tools, along with in-person and virtual workshops, offer good learning opportunities, we are also committed to further development of the asynchronous learning platform powered by Moodle. This will provide staff the ability to customize their Evergreen education on their own schedule and at their own pace. Make sure to check the Evergreen, Indiana calendar often. This is an easy way to see what's going on in the consortium and find out about upcoming workshops. Evergreen, Indiana isn't the only library organization using the Evergreen ILS, creating documentation, or developing training. Here are just a few places you can find more resources. The Evergreen ILS was first developed for Georgia Pines, a network of 53 library systems covering 146 counties in Georgia. They have an extensive but easy-to-navigate body of documentation that might be useful as you learn more about using Evergreen ILS. Sitka is a consortium of public, school, government, and special libraries across Canada. It is administered by the BC Library Cooperative, which serves around 200 libraries and institutions from one side of Canada to the other. Sitka has a very extensive catalog of documentation that covers all core topics of the ILS as well as features specific to academic and special libraries. General Evergreen ILS documentation is available at the community website. While this documentation is not as user-friendly and intentionally not specific to any one library organization, it is the most complete repository for various versions of Evergreen ILS. This website also includes the database schema maps, which can be helpful when building intricate reports or understanding relationships within the database. The general Evergreen ILS documentation is not considered a good starting point for frontline library staff just beginning with Evergreen, but it can be a valuable reference as one's knowledge base grows. Finally, let's talk about communication. Evergreen Indiana is an organization whose purpose is sharing and collaboration between libraries. So it stands to reason that one of its fundamental components is communication. There are several ways that you can keep in touch. If you like lists, we have lists for you. Depending on who you are trying to reach out to, it is likely that you will find the right contact information in one of the Evergreen contact lists. Please keep in mind that some of the information might not be completely accurate. We rely on member libraries to provide us with key staff updates, and sometimes that takes a while. Even so, it is very likely that you will connect with the appropriate person, regardless of staff changes, utilizing the information available through the lists. You may be able to find contact information utilizing the Evergreen member map as a gateway to access individual library websites and general phone numbers. This is also a good way to see who might be closest in case you need to arrange a face-to-face meeting for a tutorial or Q&A session. Another great way to both send and receive questions or information about Evergreen Indiana-related topics is by subscribing to one or more of the available email lists. Each has a different focus, and you can subscribe to as many you'd like. Each email list link here will take you to its subscription screen where more information about that list is provided and you can sign up. The Evergreen Help Desk is a tool to connect with support staff at Indiana State Library to troubleshoot issues with Evergreen ILS. Be sure to know your local library's procedures for submitting help desk tickets. It is important to provide as much information as possible with any ticket you submit, including any patron or item barcodes related to the issue, what account you were using when the issue occurred, and all the fields included in the ticket form. It is also very helpful for individuals to include screenshots with help desk tickets. If you are unsure how to take screenshots, there are some helpful videos on YouTube, or you can always contact an Evergreen Indiana support person. This leads to the next and final, for this presentation, aspect of communication, your Evergreen Indiana support team. You should always feel free to reach out to any and all of us to answer any questions you might have, or just work through an issue. This is the end of the first video in the Evergreen Indiana Foundation series. In the next video, you will be introduced to the Evergreen software. We will cover topics including staff accounts, accessing the client, workstation configuration, understanding the interfaces, and permissions.